there was mention about you having an kind of an outreach arm of the project here called Fuerza del Amor, and I understand that is one of your ways of reaching to the outer community, the outer biosphere maybe. Tell us a little bit more about that. What are your plans for touching the lives in the pueblo around here?
Mhm. So this kind of came out of the COVID moment. We've always had plans to create bioregional self-sufficiency and sovereignty. And when the COVID moment happened, it just gave us the opportunity to do that because we weren't distracted with retreats and gatherings and all of that. And Alan Lager, who's one of our community members, is sort of spearheading this work. And it's essentially a mutual aid network model. And that's actually related to the last question as well of how we gather and so the model is that this is the average pueblo size in Costa Rica. It's like 60 or 70% of Costa Rica is about 200, 300 people person communities. And so there's about 110 houses or something in this area. So if we had 40 people join this volunteer network, that's 10 people every Sunday. It's once a month volunteering, and from the community. And what we offer is the organizing support. We have 3-person organizing team, Alan and 2 others, and we pay about $500 in hardware per house. And we do these Solidarity Sundays where we go to each person's house in the community. Eventually we'll get, hopefully, inshallah, we get to them all. And it's like a mutual aid construction, essentially. So the organizing happens beforehand, people come on Sundays, and we can help do the basics, build walls, put in toilets, what's needed, put in a primary garden. So Sarah Hartley, who's our permaculture lead and chief farmer, she organizes a bunch of us to do that. And then whoever's on the land from Brave Earth comes and supports as well. So there might be 5 or 10 of us and 10 local people and 3 organizers, and that would be like the ideal Sunday. And from that sort of mutual aid construction, if you will, a kind of whole model has spun out of it, where there's a community hub called Mycelio. There's going to be a community food forest. We just got 8 acres of land that's essentially been gifted for us to create a secondary garden, essentially. So if your house has your primary stuff, this would have more like sweet potato and yucca and higher touch crops, essentially. And that would be like an open food forest for the community. And from that, there's also community policing arm and like co-counsel for people. So there's mediation, so we don't need external police officers who are often not in tune with the community itself, coming from the external world. So a whole kind of little community ecosystem services, let's say, is emerging from Fuerza del Amor.
So how are you organizing this centralized from your hub here, or are you organizing this from the Pueblos Desarrollo? Or
It's 2 local community members and Alan from our community. So it's a mix between us and our neighbors, essentially. It's the broader community coming together to do this.
And we because we are building the retreat side, we had a lot of the tools and the construction equipment. So we, on Sundays, we allow that equipment to be used. So they're using the tools and things to make doors and toilets and stuff. But then they'll work at site and they'll work here on the Sundays. And then the house has been rented, where it's the hub, as Alnoor called it, the mycelio, which will be like the networking place, which they're working on now, actually, to get it running to be like a community center, a coffee shop, place for connection, yeah.
And about outside your gates here, about how far is kind of the center of the town here, the pueblo?
Like, it's sort of it's like like 5 minutes maybe. Yeah, we're it's a pretty small community.
It's got a high school and a little. It's like a normal.
It's like your average town. Yeah.
And so the community gardens and fruit forests and this community center, are they kind of in the middle of your space here? Is that kind of at the gates, or you have
it's
another
outside.
property
No,
outside
another
of
it's
it?
outside.
property.
Yeah. It's like
Okay.
it's right in the middle of the community. So
Okay.
so basically, when you enter off the main road, San Isidro Peñas Blancas starts. It's actually called San Juan, our little pueblo. So when you come out of San Isidro Peñas Blancas, you're in San Juan, and that's the pueblo of about 300 people, and so it's right in the middle of that. So it's sort of we're at the end of the pueblo, like sort of we're almost on the edge of the eternal rainforest here, and so it's right in the middle of town.
Mhm. And that's where the mycelio is as well. There's a house being rented that's right there. In
The house and
center.
the farm are right beside each other.
Mhm.
Okay, and these are something that you bought, or they're being donated to the cause?
They just gave it to us for really low monthly rent. The owners know what we're doing for the community and part of the community, and so they've said, take these long leases for super reasonable rent, and yeah, like in a place like Costa Rica for a few $100s a month, you can get a perfect little center in the middle of town. And we're also using regenerative agriculture and organic methods, and so they've been growing yucca, for example, in conventional destructive agrochemical processes, right? And so they get to regenerate their land, and it's not being used anyways right now, and so the community benefits from it. So landowners in the community who have multiple pieces of land are really open to that. And we think, let's see, we're in the first year, it's super early days, it's an experiment, but there's a possibility for this to be a very replicable model. And almost like we feel as international people coming into another country, that this is not just like a nice to have, it's critical that we're integrated into the community and we're of service to the community that we're embedded in, firstly. Secondly, that we believe in localization. We believe in anarchist philosophy, we call it subsidiarity, which is like the base of power has to be at where decisions are made, which is the local level. And so, we feel like this is a sort of critical missing piece in the infrastructure of communities, which is creating that bioregional self-sufficiency. Right, and look, when collapse happens, and it will happen, we probably have 10 years left at best of the Western way of living. You can't. If we just look at the economic system as it is, it requires 3% growth per year. Right, that's the minimum the World Bank and the IMF and others say is necessary. Right. And in this growth-based industrial capitalist system, that means you're doubling the global economy every 20 years. Like 3% a year doesn't sound like a lot, but just think about that. In 20 years, double the amount of Big Macs, iPhones, Toyota Priuses, etc., right? It's physically impossible. And with debt-based currency, you have to grow the pie in order for the Ponzi scheme to not implode on itself. And so part of the thinking is like the people who are going to sort of be the most resilient in the face of those types of global machinations are people and communities that have a strong web of interpersonal relationship and food sovereignty, and ideally indigenous wisdom of place. Those are sort of the three factors that we want to contribute to.
So in setting this all up for the local regional community, have you done any kind of like surveying or kind of deep questioning with the people here that you're wanting to serve to see what they are looking for, what they'd be hoping for out of a program like this?
That's really like the first step. So this idea emerged from and with the community. And then when we realized it, like roughly the scale needed to make this thing work, right? Like you have a 300-person community. If you want 10 volunteers per a Sunday, you're going to need at least 40 people in that pool. And so Alan and Ali and Krishna, the two local women who work with Alan, went door to door, and I think they're still in the process of doing it.
Yeah.
Every house in the neighborhood, and having a conversation with every single person in the neighborhood. And then also, and I'm sure this is true for most towns, there's like an unofficial local mayor, this amazing woman named Rocio, who runs the local water. She's like the Aya rep locally, and she's like the mama of the neighborhood. You know, she kind of knows everything from who needs what to what the local gossip is, right? And we work really closely with her. And actually, Alex, one of the FDA crew, is her daughter. And so it's deeply embedded in the community. Like, I think that's the only way to do it, right? Like the old model of believing that you're separate, and even the idea of charity is so laughable, right? It's like, we don't believe in charity. You know, there's that old line that says charity only exists because we don't have justice. You know, we come from a solidarity lens. And so that's always happening in dialogue. And we always learn, like, of course, as outsiders, as foreigners, as gringos, like, we don't know what we don't know. And that's part of the humility, is like, we have blind spots and we are constantly making mistakes, but we ask for that feedback of like, how do we show up better as community members.